This is one of several disturbing photos that 12-year-old Dylan Redwine discovered of his father, Mark, on a family road trip in June of 2011. Just over a year later, Dylan vanished from his father's home in the Colorado wilderness.
13-year-old Colorado teenager Dylan Redwine has been missing for 11 days.
The task force announcing a major development in the case. They say Dylan did not run away.
As hundreds of searchers descended on the Rocky Mountain towns, rivers, and valleys, one main suspect came to the forefront. And even his family was questioning his involvement.
You're his father. How could you do this to him?
If you know how many fathers with missing sons have ever refused to take a polygraph?
He was the light of my life, and he meant everything to me. And I just want him home just like everybody else does.
It's a disappearance and murder that took more than 5 years to solve. The answers were hidden in family secrets, a disturbing fetish, and a family road trip where everything went horribly wrong. This is the case of Dylan Redwine, a 13-year-old who faced death at the hands of someone who was supposed to love and nurture him.
If you lead us to him, I absolutely guarantee you that I would not arrest you today.
Dylan Redwine was born in 1999 in Denver, Colorado to Mark and Elaine Redwine. His older brother Cory was 8 when his family welcomed Dylan home. Immediately, Cory knew that he would do anything for his little best friend. Growing up, Dylan developed a fierce love of sports. They were never just a passing game to him. They were something that he was dedicated to from the very beginning. No matter how his team was doing, he would continue to put his full effort into the game and encourage his teammates to do the same. If someone felt left out, Dylan did everything he could to make sure they were included in the fun. Everyone who knew Dylan had the same thing to say. He was a polite, funny young man who had a bright future ahead of him and was surrounded by a family who loved him. That family had some problems. When Dylan was just 6, his parents divorced. Mark, who was working as a truck driver, got the house. Elaine ended up with primary custody. Eventually, she moved on and remarried a contractor named Mike Hall. With him, she relocated to Monument, a 6-hour drive away from Durango, taking Dylan with her. At the time, Cory was over 18, but he chose to move to the same town as his mother and brother in order to be close to them. Mark was left behind, and court records indicate that he was not thrilled with that. At that point, he and Cory's relationship was incredibly strained, and with no court-mandated visits to abide by anymore, he stopped visiting his father altogether. Dylan, however, wasn't so lucky. Due to the custody agreement and the separation, he had no choice but to visit his father several times a year. It was no secret to his mother or brother that he hated visiting his father. In his mother's eyes, it was because Dylan was bored at his father's house, which was nestled in the center of thick woods, far, far removed from the homes of his friends. But Cory knew the real reason why Dylan didn't want to go. In November of 2012, Dylan was ordered by the court to spend Thanksgiving with his father. Because he was spending Christmas with his mother, in the eyes of the law, it was a fair trade-off. But Dylan didn't get to spend Christmas with his mother. On November 18, 2012, standing in the Colorado Springs airport, Elaine saw her son for the very last time. As he had walked away from her to get in line for security, she called after him, teasing, "What, are you too old to hug your mother now?" Smiling and rolling his eyes like a typical teen, Dylan walked back to his mom and gave her a hug before he disappeared into the crowd of travelers. Elaine watched him go, completely unaware that he was heading for disaster. She would later say that she thought he was always safe with his father. She was wrong. This snapshot of surveillance footage was captured as Dylan exited the terminal at Durango-La Plata County Airport. In the footage, he approached his dad, and the two left without exchanging a hug. The welcome was far from warm. The story of the hours that followed can only be examined through text messages and surveillance footage, both of which show that it didn't get much better. The father and son went to Walmart. The entire time they were shopping, they hardly exchanged smiles or words. At the exact time the security cameras captured this footage, Dylan was texting his friend Ryan. He asked Ryan if he could stay at his house for the night, and Ryan agreed. But when Dylan asked his dad at Walmart, he told him he couldn't go. Instead, he planned to go to Ryan's at 6:30 the next morning when his father had to leave to handle some things at his office. That alone makes it pretty clear that Dylan was desperate to get out of his dad's house. He had hardly been in Durango for an hour and was already actively planning an escape. The next morning, Ryan woke up at 6:30 to unlock the door for Dylan, but when he stumbled downstairs, half asleep, he was surprised to find Dylan nowhere to be found. He sent Dylan a text asking where he was, but he got no response. The previous night, at 9:37 p.m., Dylan's phone had been turned off. Never turned on again. It wasn't until that afternoon that Ryan got confirmation that things were deeply, deeply wrong. Mark stopped by the house asking if he had seen Dylan. He told him, and would later tell police, that when he left home at 7:30 that morning, he was asleep on the couch. When he returned around 11, his son was nowhere to be seen. At around 4 p.m., Elaine, who was, again, 6 hours away, received a concerning text. The message came from Mark, asking if she had heard from Dylan. Frantic, she told him that she hadn't, and asked where he had seen him last. Immediately, she packed a bag and began the journey to Durango with Cory in tow. It wasn't Mark who called to report Dylan missing. It was Elaine, from hundreds of miles away.
Police Fire Dispatch. Hi, my name is Elaine Redwine, and my son Dylan Redwine was visiting his dad up in Durango, and his dad texted me a little while ago and said he could not find Dylan.
From the get-go, she knew there was more wrong than just her son being missing.
There was never any doubt in my mind ever from day one. I knew that Mark had something to do with Dylan's disappearance.
The feeling was so strong that upon arriving at Mark's home, the first thing Cory said to his father was, "What did you do to Dylan?" At the time, Cory knew something that no one else did, and he suspected it was the key to his brother's disappearance. The very first night, rescue crews frantically searched for Dylan in the mountains surrounding the rural home. Even after the long trip, Cory and Elaine were both in attendance, searching well into the night. But at 11 p.m., as teams continued to search the woods around the house, Mark Redwine turned all the lights off in his home and went to bed. Deputy District Attorney Fred Johnson stated that it was at this exact moment that he realized Dylan was gone. Mark told investigators that he believed that Dylan had gone fishing because when he returned from doing his errands, Dylan's fishing pole was gone, and the TV, which had been playing Nickelodeon, was turned off. But there were two problems wrong with that statement, according to Elaine. Firstly, Dylan didn't really like fishing. He'd never gone alone. Secondly, over the summer, Dylan's TV preferences had shied away from kids' cartoons on Nickelodeon. Instead, he almost exclusively watched MTV as he slipped into his teenage years. To Elaine, Mark's story wasn't only a clear indication that he was lying, but that he didn't even know his own son. As the searches continued, both Elaine and Mark were brought in for interrogations with law enforcement. Mark's story was that the visit with Dylan had started off rocky, but between Walmart and getting home, the two began to get along. When they got inside, the two roughhoused on the couch. Law enforcement felt that Mark was using the roughhousing as a cover story to excuse evidence inside the house. When they got a warrant to search the home, they got confirmation of that. Luminol revealed spots of blood throughout the home, beneath a newly placed rug, on the bare floor in the front of the couch, on the edge of the coffee table, on the couch in multiple places. The sample on the love seat matched Dylan, and the other samples couldn't be ruled out as being his. As the searches for Dylan continued, detectives kept the information about what they discovered during their warrant search under wraps. Even without the blood evidence in the home being public knowledge, suspicion of Mark grew. He blocked both Cory and Elaine's numbers, refusing to answer their calls or questions. In desperation, they led a protest outside of his home, demanding answers.
Bring Dylan home! Bring Dylan home! Bring Dylan home!
They even went so far as to go on the Dr. Phil show to confront Mark. Of course, that interaction went just about as well as you can expect, with Mark repeatedly placing the blame on Elaine and Cory and avoiding answering questions.
Did you hurt him?
No, Elaine, I wouldn't hurt him. What kind of mother are you to even think that I was capable of doing something?
And you don't even care. You don't. Where is any of your feelings?
What emotion is it you're trying to get out of me?
I want you to do something to find Dylan.
I can say my own words. I am at you. I don't like you. I hate you. And you have been nothing of a father since the last 10 years.
Needless to say, Mark didn't come off the show smelling like roses. On the confrontations with the family and community continued. Soon, Mark gave the first real clue about Dylan's fate. Two of Elaine's friends confronted Mark in front of his house. An argument ensued, and one of the women made a comment that angered Mark so much that he lifted up a log, raising it over his head to attack them. The women jumped in their car and sped off. What comment could they have possibly made to elicit that response? A comment about these disturbing photos. On a road trip to Boston to see a Red Sox game in 2011, Dylan couldn't sleep. When he opened his father's laptop, he stumbled upon several photos of him wearing women's lingerie and a diaper. Then, photos of him defecating in the diaper, after consuming the feces. Dylan woke up his older brother, who went to the bathroom and took pictures with his cell phone of the photos for evidence. At that point, the custody battle between Elaine and Mark was reaching a fever pitch. He felt it would help their case if needed. News of those photos only spread after Dylan's disappearance. In June of that year, Dylan had texted his brother asking for the photos. Tired of hearing his dad badmouth his mother and brother, Dylan wanted to confront him with them. It's unknown if he actually did in June or at all. However, many believe that he confronted his father with the photos the night he landed in Colorado, and in a fit of rage, his father attacked him. As word of the photos spread, Mark spoke out against them, claiming they were photoshopped.
No, it's not me in the photos. Absolutely not.
To Cory, the photos provided his dad with a clear motive, but for months, the searches continued without any answers. Until finally, in June of 2013, the melting snow allowed new search areas to open up. A search team discovered partial remains 8 miles from Mark's home off a seasonal trail on Middle Mountain Road. The gates were closed yearly from the end of November to the beginning of summer, only making them accessible by ATV. Mark owned an ATV, and a neighbor reported seeing him driving down from the gate in April of 2013. Alongside the remains, searchers discovered socks, shoes, headphones, and a t-shirt matching those belonging to Dylan. Dylan's mother and brother were devastated by the discovery, as were his friends.
It was just like a whole 7 months of all this hard work and hope and stuff just shattered.
Yet, at the same time, they were relieved to have closure about what happened to Dylan. Mark, on the other hand, took the offensive. Here's a call between him and investigator Tanya Goldbricht, who was dedicated to discovering what happened to his son, even when he wasn't.
This is Mark.
Hey Mark, it's Tanya.
Hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful, how are you?
Oh, I'm living the dream, the dream.
Are you intoxicated, Mark?
Nope, not at all.
Okay, then why are you talking to me like that?
Because you can't seem to think no deeper than the surface. Because I'll be honest with you, Tanya, I don't think you're capable of handling a situation.
Really? Don't you think it's pretty amazing we found any remains up on Middle Mountain? In the middle of nowhere?
You know, 2% of Dylan's remains does not constitute him being found, so you know what?
Yes, it does. He's dead. We know that now. If we hadn't gone up there and looked, we wouldn't have known that.
So 2% of Dylan's remains constitutes him being found.
I'd like to find the rest of him, but yes, we know what happened. We know he's no longer with us.
2 years later, in November of 2015, 2 hikers discovered the skull of Dylan, a little over a mile from where his other remains were located. Forensic anthropologists determined that the skull had 2 divots that were consistent with the marks of a knife. These marks were what is known as perimortem, which means that the bone was surrounded by a viscous substance at the time they were inflicted. To put it simply, Dylan must have been recently deceased when he was stabbed in the head. The wounds didn't come from an animal scattering his body after he was disposed of in the mountains. In 2017, a new DA was elected in the county. Within weeks, a warrant for Mark's arrest was issued. On July 22nd, police in Washington, where Mark was working as a truck driver, descended to arrest him.
There's a passenger. Just keep your hands up, buddy. Just keep your hands up. Nolly wall, watch the cab. I got the cab. Around me. Go around back. Yep. Just keep your hands up.
Don't move, bud, okay? Do not move. Drop a cigarette.
You guys can? You'll explain to me what's going on?
Yes, sir. Is your name Mark?
Yes, it is.
Are you Mark?
Yes, sir. I am.
Okay. I'm the sergeant. Did you say you asked to speak with me?
Well, I was asking a few questions. First of all, I'm trying to understand what exactly is going on.
Okay. Before we get going here, I do got to let you know I am equipped with a body-worn camera. Records both audio and video. Okay. Have you been read your Miranda rights yet?
No, I have not.
Okay. Let me make sure I get those read to you so that I'm trying to answer all the questions you have. But because you're in handcuffs and because you're in the back of a police car, I do want you to know what your rights are too. Okay. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. You have the right at this time to talk to a lawyer and have him present with you while you're being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you before any question if you wish. And you can decide at any time to exercise these rights and not answer any questions or make any statements. You understand each of those rights that I just read to you? Okay. Yeah, having those rights in mind, the reason why you're in handcuffs right now is because we received a call from an agency in Colorado. You know, is it Washington County or is it?
Plata County, maybe.
Okay. And what had happened is they had got information that you were potentially up here, and they said that they had a warrant for murder second for you. I'm sorry?
I have no idea what that's about.
Okay.
Almost 10 years after Dylan disappeared, in 2021, the trial for his murder began. By then, the friends he had grown up with, the same friends who would search for him, were already out of college. During the 3-week trial, Mark's team tried to paint a picture that Dylan had gone for a hike and been killed by a bear. Wildlife experts, however, denied the possibility of this, as most bears would be in hibernation, and there were no marks indicating an attack of that nature. After just 1 day of deliberation, Mark was found guilty of his son's murder. The prosecution believes that Mark killed his son with blunt force trauma, then decapitated him to dispose of his remains in the remote wilderness. He was sentenced to 48 years in prison. For Lane and Cory, however, their sentence is life. They will never see Dylan again, though they actively work to keep his memory alive and carry him in everything that they do. The loss of a child is unimaginable. In the case of Ronnie O'Neill, which we've covered here, it was a child who was the only survivor after a family massacre at the hands of the one person meant to protect him most in the world. A man who felt no remorse for the brutality of his actions and made that clear by acting as his own attorney in court.